welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mr. I'm Mr. Pierre, and I am joined by Professor Hamilton. I believe you go by the communication expert.
Yes, the communication expert. At least
Experts,
I
yes.
could be.
And I think you do that very, very well. I'm going to just be straight honest with the folks who are listening to the podcast. This podcast is going to be a little bit different. Most of the podcasts that I have are with educators, and we talk about our experiences as educators or how to influence folks who are coming into the profession to stay in the profession. But seeing your particular TikTok and the advice that you gave on how to equip kiddos when they're dealing with a bully is something that is definitely in our wheelhouse. And so it was part of the reason why I wanted to invite you to the podcast. And so thank you very much for coming through, Professor Hamilton.
Yeah, it is my pleasure to be here. Any way I can help, that's my game. So absolutely, I appreciate the invite.
Game on then, game on. So if you could just give folks who are listening just a little bit of your background.
Mm,
Who are you? What are you about? If there was like an elevator pitch for Professor Hamilton, what would it be?
Sure. I grew up in a really difficult home life. Didn't think I could actually make it in college. Professor looked at me in my first semester and said, "Hey, you've got what it takes." So I went on. I never stopped. I loved college so much, I just became a professor. I have a Master of Arts in Communication Studies, Bachelor of Science in Communication Studies as well. I have experience in directing nationally competitive speech and debate programs at top 10 schools. Went from IU, Indiana University, down to Florida State College, and they changed my life when it comes to conversations about relationships and bullying. That's really where all of this ultimately started. So I have over 20 years of experience teaching in higher education. I have 3 kids and a husband, 2 dogs, a rabbit, and a fish. Like it is a full-on circus in my house. So I retired from teaching about, right around COVID. I had just decided that it's probably not the place I want to ultimately be. There's so much more that I want to give, especially for kids in the K through 12 system, where I found that a lot of what's happening there filters over into higher education. And I've noticed that there is a huge gap and a huge need that perhaps I might be able to uh, fill in some small way, hopefully some major way, but at the time, can I actually use my degree in communication studies to influence how people respond to power? And sure enough, there's multiple theories out there in our field, and why we're not using them in this context is a big question mark to me. And so I just decided to throw out a TikTok, and people liked the first one, and then they both liked and hated the second one that went viral, and which I had anticipated. But it has brought me to this conversation today, right? Which I think ultimately, like it or hate it, take or leave the advice. The most important thing is that we're having a conversation about it. It's no longer swept under the rug or ignored by a variety of different hosts. We are actually talking about it, and that's key for me. I think talking and bringing a conversation about it is bringing awareness to the issue. So that's really where I'm at today.
Yeah, and just that being able to converse, hold a conversation seems to be something that is getting more and more difficult. If initially you and whoever you're having that conversation with, what I'm seeing with young kiddos is like if we don't immediately agree, then it means that we gotta butt heads, as opposed to like, hey, can I hear more? Can you tell me more? Why do you like that? Seems to have gone out the window. If I can get your thoughts on how do we begin to remedy that?
Well, when we think about conflict, we honestly think that it is just an escalation of events, right? An escalation of messages. And conflict isn't just about escalating messages. Conflict is about understanding what type of style you might be able to use in order to diffuse or to have conflict that can be very beneficial, right? So when we think about conflict, we always think about just fighting and escalating to fistfights or whatever the case is, or yelling at each other, which in some cases that happens. There's all kinds of different styles of conflict resolution that we can use in order to diffuse the situation or to remedy it. And our kids aren't necessarily taught how to have great conflict, right? Like when they're in K through 12, they're learning all of the emotional things that go along with growth. They're growing, they're learning social environmental factors and all of the things that are involved with that. They come preoccupied from things that are happening at home. And we have this possible conflict where students don't know how to respond. And if we can teach them how to, in a way, diffuse, and I say diffuse, but in a way, it's just to harmonize the power construct that happens is really what we're after. So neutralizing, using a neutralizing message, which is not powerful, nor is it submission, really allows the bully to step back and go, wait a minute, that's not what I was expecting, nor is that what I wanted. How do I respond? And it gives enough time to to exist between the comments that it just diffuses it and they walk along their business. And then tomorrow they might be best friends. Who knows? So um, it's just an interesting dynamic that we have there when we're talking about a power struggle, especially when kids are perceiving something a certain way and they don't want to be perceived in that way. How do they respond without losing a sense of power? And I think that can be true across all kinds of contexts, not just in the K through 12 system, right? All the way up through, employment and work scenarios.
Do you have an example as to what that phrase or comment could be that does that, what you were mentioning about that diffusing?
Yeah, sure. So if my daughter, and this is probably the first TikTok I put out, was there's this little girl in my neighborhood who comes over to play with my daughter, and she was telling me about a bully on her bus, and she was like, they call me baby all the time. You're a baby, you're a baby. And immediately my response was, because I've been diving into this specific type of methodology and dealing with bullies for many years now. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to tell her what I would say to my own kids, right? I want you to look at them and say, nope, and then just turn and walk away, or turn and just end the communication event by breaking eye contact and turning towards the front. But I want you to say something. And she goes, okay. I said, so let's practice. I said, I'm going to call you a baby, and I want you to respond with nope, and then turn and continue doing what you're doing. And so I said, you're a baby, you're a baby. And she did. She turned right around. She looked right at me in the eye. She goes, nope. And she turned and walked away. In that space, she could walk away, but on a bus, she wouldn't be able to, right? So I
Right.
was like, you know what? This is really empowering. So she went, and the next day she came back. She goes, Miss Jamie, I did what you said, and it totally worked. He stopped calling me baby. And I asked her a week later, I said, did he ever call you baby again? She goes, nope. And I was like, great. So, and whether or not, the theory or the process has not been tested, right? So there's no quantitative research to suggest that this is true in a bullying scenario as what we are trying to apply it to, right? But it has been tested in power control scenarios, right? Which is where we see our research from. But at the end of the day, if she can say nope, which is a one word, and it's empowering to her, and the bully stands back and goes, wait a second, what do you mean nope? Wait a minute. What? Wait, what? Yes, you are. You're a baby. She doesn't even have to respond ever again. All she has to say is once, and it allows her to step into the space of power that the bully is trying to create, and it just diffuses it, and she goes on with her life. Now, is it going to work in every scenario? No. But is
Nope.
it a tool? Right. Nope. Is it a tool that she can use? She can certainly use the tool in a variety of scenarios to see if it works. And that's really all we're doing, is giving kids tools that they can choose from depending on their situation that might really help them gain some confidence as they go along their social environment.
Awesome, awesome. Now, um, does age play a factor in these sort of situations? Like, so that situation, I'm assuming, was that elementary or is that middle school when it's something as simple as nope?
Yeah, that was in elementary school. So age would play a role, obviously, simply because emotional maturity gets more profound and more defined. Students know how to manipulate actually better, which is one of the reasons why we find this to be a really interesting dynamic as they grow.
Mhm.
Junior high, they're just ruthless, right? They're just ruthless in junior high.
Oh,
But if I had to teach outside of college, I would teach junior high. I think they're so malleable and they're so fun. That's the grades I would teach, 7, 8, and 9. But
yeah.
high school, they're very thought provoking, right? They're almost I would say malicious, but they're very cognitive as to how they are bullying, not just
Mm,
saying your baby just to be snarky. they're really after something, right? And so while the process and the messages would work in all of the grades, even all the way up through adulthood, we find that the way in which the message is delivered is probably profoundly different. So this little girl in elementary school could just go, nope, and just turn and walk away, while a little guy, a medium-sized guy, right, in middle school might just have to go, uh-uh, right? While it means nope, it's a different type of way they're saying it. And in high school,
Yeah.
they may just go, I reject that message, right? Which is
Okay.
nope again, right? But
Yeah.
you can't ask an elementary age kid to say I reject that message because they're under it's too much stress, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we want to see the messages actually match the emotional stability and maturity of the age group that they're provided. But we are so new and really developing all of this since there's an audience for it. We are scrambling like mad to just get messages formulated and really tested through a variety of different scenarios to see if it would work. But yeah, I would say it's definitely different.
Because I teach middle school, and I love just the succinctness of that phrase, whether it's noped or I reject this, and then the like you mentioned, the turnaround to be able to walk away from the situation and say, either choose to say nothing or go about your business as to whatever it was that you were doing, just to break that up.
Yeah.
Whew. What other piece of advice would you give to young people? And because I'm in the wheelhouse of middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, what tools would you say to equip them with to handle those types of situations?
You know, I would encourage people, and it's funny because I have a lot of people who have sent me messages and they want me to answer like their bullying questions, right? And what
Yeah.
we'll eventually try to teach people is how to decide your own neutral message because I can't possibly answer billions of bullying messages, right? We want to be
Yeah.
able to teach people the process by which we really come up with it, right? So I think that, my advice would be to recognize number one, if a bully sends you a power domineering message, the only way that message is domineering is if you respond like it's domineering, right? So if when we respond in a symmetrical way and we are responding in an escalated tone, you're a baby, no, you're a baby, right? I am meeting a domineering message with another domineering message. And that basically validates the bully as I am powerful.
Mm,
Okay, so even I could walk around going, you're so dumb, everybody in here is dumb. But if nobody responds to me in a way that makes me feel powerful, then have no power, right? So, but if we walk away and we submit, right, not saying anything at all is not an option. So the other is a one down message. That's considered a one up message when I choose to share a domineering message to somebody who has already sent me a domineering message. I'm sending a one up message to match them.
mhm.
When I send a one down message, it's a submissive message. And basically, what we're doing is saying, just walk away, just ignore it. But we don't want to do that because that also tells the person in power that they are still in power.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
keeps going and going and going. And so,
Yeah.
I would advise anybody in any grade level never to advise to just walk away unless it's a dangerous situation. We don't want people hurt, right? But at the end of the
Right.
day, they can say anything, even a sound out of whatever the case is, right? Out of their mouth, it gives them confidence to actually confront the conflict and not run away from it. And so that's what we're doing is saying, hey, listen, the neutral message is you can say pancakes, book, earphone, headbutt, I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't matter hair. It doesn't matter what symbol you're saying as long as it's not nothing or a one up to match the power dominance that's happening.
Got
I
it.
actually
Got it.
I actually advised a little girl who has a speech situation happening, and she just has a really hard time just formulating words. And so I encouraged her mom. I said, "Listen, I want you to just have her say pancakes. That's it. I mean, it has nothing to do with what is being said to her. They're making fun of her speech. She doesn't want her to walk away because it reduces the confidence that she has. And it, obviously tells the bully that they're in charge. So I said, and so she did. She looked at him and goes, pancakes. And they're like, pancakes? What's that? What do you think? What? Right? And it came honestly, it could be any message at all. So I would recommend that people never just walk away unless it's dangerous. I would recommend never to use a one-up message because it will escalate because you're
Mhm.
challenging power. But if you can just say something that neutralizes it and walk away, it's a very powerful tool to use.
It's interesting because so often I can recall the training that I got as a new teacher and what you mentioned about that one down message. Oh, just ignore it, walk away. Why is that? Can you speak more to why that is so
Yeah,
detrimental to both the detrimental to the person who the I guess the I'm going to say attack is
yeah.
coming to towards, and why that isn't something that they ought to do?
Mm. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
Because
I'm
as
recovering from a
that's quite because as a teacher, it's like, oh yeah, just ignore them, walk away. But why is that such a yeah? Why is that such
yeah.
a no no?
Well, I mean, if we are submitting to somebody who is powerful, then we are telling that person that they are in charge. And whatever they say, we ought to do, whether or not it's, you know, go drink this much, go into your mom's cupboard, go out in the middle of the street, jump in front of this car. I mean, whatever the case is, right? We don't want to give power. So when we tell people to just ignore it and walk away, we basically are telling them to, okay, that message exists, it's out there, and nobody is saying anything against it. It is out there. If there's nothing opposing it, then it must be true. That in the brain of somebody is very difficult for humans, all the way up from preschool to high school, to just, okay, I'm just going to walk away. Okay, it doesn't confront the message, the power message that has already been showcased. It just says it exists. I'm going to walk away, ignore it. Therefore, it must be true. And we don't want kids to think that. Like if, somebody called me, I mean, listen, I've been getting bullied on TikTok for a few minutes here, which I think it's funny, so like somebody said something, brush your hair, right? On a comment. And I was like, brush my hair. So I made a TikTok video of it. And I was just like, yeah, I'll brush my hair. Here you go. This is what brushing my hair looks like, right? If I were to just let it go, I could have just let it go, especially I guess, a multimedia platform like that, and just let it ride. But it bothered me a little bit, and because it bothered me a little bit, I felt like I needed to just say something in response because it helps
Got it.
me to have confidence knowing that I can say something. Now, if it doesn't bother them, like it really doesn't phase them at all, ignoring it would be an option, right? But
Got it.
most kids don't operate in that way, especially with the lower, I would say lower, the lack of emotional maturity at that
Yeah.
age bracket. So we want to teach them to
Yeah.
stand up for themselves because they're valuable.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. You're absolutely right that it's impossible to think of every single scenario. So trying to come up with a Swiss Army knife for every single it's just not it's not possible. But I think what you just shared there of the one up and one down, we just don't want those two to exist. To
Right.
be able to just break that with something as simple as nope,
Mhm.
pancake, or some other word or sound,
Yeah.
and then the continuing of whatever it is that you were doing before to keep go right back to that. All right, awesome.
Mhm. My son likes
What?
to say Uno reverse card. That's what his
Yes,
it's like, Uno reverse card, and then he walks right. But in a way, you're also challenging, right? Because that's what an Uno reverse does, right? It challenges you in a lot of ways. So, pass. Um, I reject that. I mean, any really synonym of no, nope, or pass or reject is really all great terms that you can use.
awesome. Now that's for the kiddos. How would you? What suggestions would you have for those of us who are supporting the kiddos? Like how? Because in every situation, similarly, I'm not going to have all the words, but I have now one tool of like, hey kiddo, if sort of situation arises, you can do X, Y, Z. What other suggestion would you have for us, whether it be educators, whether it be parents, whether it be uncles, aunties, friends, for our young people, that when they do come to us, we're like, all right, Professor Hamilton said I had one, two, and three things. Let me just remember this one thing.
No problem. Yeah, I think that number one is to assess the scenario, right? How much does it affect you? Okay. If it affects them, then move to the second phase would be to give them a tool they can use on their own. Yeah. Now, this is only, I'm talking about verbal bullying. The physical bullying needs the accompaniment of another human, in my opinion,
Agreed.
straight up. Okay.
Yep.
So I think in any verbal bullying situation, we want to give them the tools that they can use because it builds stronger character, it builds grit, it allows for them to have better confidence. So I would just give them any, I mean, really, this person is, yelling at me in the playground. They're telling me that I'm stupid, and, it affects them enough to come and talk to you about it. Does it bother you? Yes, it really bothers me. Tell me what bothers you about it, and then let them articulate that. I hear you. I see you. Validate their feelings. I can see that is a really not great way to communicate with somebody. I'm sorry that's happening to you. The next time they say that to you, I just want you to look right at them and go, pass, and then continue doing what you're doing. And I want you to say it in the same volume as they're saying it to you. Okay? Not pass, not, I'm same volume, and match their energy with your response. And then I would just tell educators to watch and listen and then check back in, right? If you're able to. Educators are so overwhelmed. I don't know how y'all do it. You're superheroes in my book, right? So if you're in a position and you can check back in and just say, how did that work? And if it didn't work, give them another phrase to use, right? And or tell them to use the same phrase for a week and then check back in a week. Sometimes a bully, it takes a minute for a bully or somebody who's being consistently mean to recognize, oh, this isn't going to get what I want, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes we have to repeat it over and over again. But educators are also being bullied by parents and by kids. Like, I mean,
Ooh.
the comments on my feed are insane, right? So I feel like educators can, in a lot of ways, use the same techniques with their students. Although I feel like, listen, you're the boss in your classroom, right? We got to figure that out. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you're being bullied by parents, I think that, is a very careful line to draw. But when it comes to kids, I think they can, any neutral message that they're comfortable, and then I would role play with them very quickly so that they have the confidence to do it, right? And a quick role play, 30-second role play will allow them to just hopefully go out and take charge of it. But always check back in at the end if it's possible.
Okay. I'm going to use a teacher move just to make sure that I understood and caught
Yeah, do
everything that you said. So, number one, you're saying, um, if me as the educator, kiddo comes to me, I want to one, listen, validate, listen to what they're saying. Tell me what bothers you. Validate their feelings, and then with that one word, whether it's pass, nope, pancake, and then have them practice that, and then watch, listen, and then check back in.
that's right. Yeah, that's how I
All
would
right.
that's how I would roll with it. Yeah, and if it escalates, then of course you can, the teachers can get involved in a variety of different ways by talking to the bully. Sometimes the bully just needs to be redirected, and then sometimes the bully just needs a hug. you know.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah,
Some of the folks who are exhibiting the most detrimental behaviors are, yeah, they're doing it for a reason. And figuring out what that reason is something as simple as, do you just need a hug to me? Because if that's the case, bring it in.
yeah,
Yeah. Alrighty.
for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. What suggestions would you have for, because now we talked about the kiddos, we've talked about teachers. What suggestions would you have for parents?
Parents whose kids are being bullied.
Both,
Um,
yeah, both sides of the coin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that parents who, and this a majority of my comments are from parents who are being have kids who are being bullied. Parents need to be very cognizant of the role the teacher has in the classroom. I think it's one thing that I've not talked a lot about on my TikTok videos that we will be addressing is that the teacher has a very specific role in the classroom, and that is to obviously educate, but they also nurture in a lot of ways. So they parent in a variety of different um, aspects, right? Because they're still forming, cognitive and emotional and social well-being for their students. And so for parents, I would say, first of all, recognize the role that teachers have in the classroom because they are not, their eyes they only have two eyes. They can't see everything, right? And so check with the teacher if it's bothering the student, their student, and say, listen, I have noticed that my student, and I perception checking is something I just posted on my TikTok page. Perception checking is a great way to do this. Parents can go to teachers and say, I've noticed that my son is complaining and crying after school because so and so is doing X, right? So uh, the method is state the observed behavior. Number one, state the observed behavior and then tell two possible explanations. Is it because you think they're they're getting picked on a lot, or is it because they are encouraging it? What do you think is going on? Ask the teacher, and then allow the teacher to respond in a way that will, open up a conversation. Well, I didn't realize that was happening. I'm so sorry. I will definitely watch out for that. Or they might say, I didn't realize that was happening. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Maybe we can sit down with your student and come up with a plan so that that student is not so upset by what is happening. But more importantly, have a technique where the student can go to directly to the teacher, because there needs to be a trust that's built there, especially in elementary school years, right? So I think that
Yeah.
parents can certainly, talk to their student, first of all, about what's going on, right? Tell their student all of the processes, all of the tools. Nope, say this, say this. If that doesn't work, then of course, talk to the teacher. Use perception checking as a way in order to do that. So we don't want the teacher to feel like we're coming at them and it's their fault, right? And then, of course, if it doesn't work and the teacher really is absent about it and doesn't really care and you don't feel like things are progressing, I would just move up the chain. So I would talk to the principal, have the principal talk to the teacher, and
Yes.
then, because we know there are great teachers out there like yourself, but we also know there are not great teachers out there. And
Right.
we
Right.
have to be vigilant of that as well, because the influence that a teacher has in a child's life is profound. And so I think that parents have due diligence, talk to their student, talk to the teacher, use a perception checking non-defensive technique when they do that, then talk to the principal if they don't think anything is happening. And then, of course, the school board is always an option. They can go to CPS, Child Protective Services, if they feel like things are really escalating out of control. And of course, pressing charges is always an option as well, depending on the, the issue.
Yeah. Something that you just mentioned, um, I think just that knowledge part. Thinking about the beginning part of my career in education, there was just so much that I know now that I wish I had access to previously that would have helped so much more kiddos know how to regulate, as well as myself to be able to like, hey, I don't need to carry this load all by myself or be so concerned that somehow I am adding to the stress that a kiddo is already experiencing. So yeah, just could you speak a little bit more to what you just mentioned in regards to perception checking?
Yeah. So
Because
perception
that's something
checking.
that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, perception checking is one of the things that we teach in communication studies when in relation to conflict. So when we are wanting to address something that seems a little tense or conflicting, and we're not sure how to open the conversation, we don't want them to come to the conversation defensive. We might actually check the perception of the person because we understand that maybe something else is going on that I am not fully aware of. And if I can understand more about what is happening in their mind, then I might be able to understand the situation better as a whole. So, and one of the ways we do that in my classes, I use my husband as an example. For example, if my husband comes home late at night every night for a week, he doesn't, but if he did, right, I would say, husband, I've noticed that you've been coming home late every night this week. Is it because you are overwhelmed at work, or is it because there's really bad traffic on the road? What's happening, right? And then he goes, oh my gosh, you have no idea this. My boss has just put all of this stuff on me, right? And I don't even know how to deal with it. Like I am so, and it allows for them to share their perception and their emotions. What I could have done was immediately thought he was cheating on me, right? Which clearly
Right.
not,
Right.
right? But at the end of the day, my mind goes all kinds of places. And if I can just check in on the perception of the person that I'm speaking to that I might have an issue with, then it allows for me to understand more of what is really happening and therefore approach the issue a little more harmonized rather than coming at it defensive. And teachers are, I also encourage teachers to do this when they have to bring in parents of bullies, because that's hard, right? You have
Yeah.
a student in your class who's, clearly being a bully to maybe someone or a couple of people specifically, and you ask them to come in. How do you start the conversation? Well, do that. First, observe behavior. I've noticed that so and so is doing X. Tell us the behavior. Do you think it's because it's an academic issue, or do you think it's social? Tell me what your thoughts are. And then what that does is it allows parents to have like they feel like somebody's wanting their opinion, They're not just going, so and so is doing this, stop it, or this has to end, or this is, you're not coming at it in that. You're like, hey, this is a problem. I don't know what's happening exactly, but I'd love your
Yeah.
thoughts. Once
Yeah.
they have an invested, man, it diffuses so many conflicts for adults, especially. So that perception checking technique is probably one of the most profound things that I teach in my career.
And I'm thinking even for myself as an educator, using this not just with the parents, but also with the kiddos, because there'll be times where I'll see something, but there's always that backstory of like, what did I not see? Because I can perceive so and so as being the bully when in reality it's like so and so is just reacting because kiddo number one was doing something. This is the 15th time that kiddo that I missed it, and then kiddo, I the only thing I see is the kiddo who's reacting to it, and so yeah, that's like kiddo one and kiddo two. This is what I'm seeing. What am I missing? Because I think it's either this or this or this or that. Like, help me out, kiddo one, kiddo two, before just going in and just blanket statement like, kiddo two, you're at fault because I saw you throw the pencil at so and so. It's like, Mr. Pierre, yeah, you didn't see the 15 other things that
Right.
the kiddo did before that resulted in this. So I see
Yeah,
this being used not just with parents, but also, yeah, with my other modeling it for the kiddos as well.
yeah, I think that's great. And it teaches them too how to use it as they grow. I mean, what a great generation we would create, right? If we just taught them
Yeah,
how to suspend judgment long enough to
yep,
understand what's happening so that they can move forward in something. It would change the world.
right, right. Whew. I'm pausing because I'm thinking, again, as the educator, what homework could you would you assign to an educator? So, like for myself, what book or what article, something that I could then deepen my understanding of all this, so that I can be a better facilitator for our kiddos.
You know what? I think, and this is hard because again, we're so new. Like, I think the stuff with TikTok blew up a month ago, and
Yeah,
we've been in the process since October, really kind of figuring out if it's something that we can do or want to do or pull all this together. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is only, I mean, it's in, I have it, it's in a theory textbook, right? So I don't
got
think
it.
people are going to go pull a graduate level theory textbook off the bookshelf and start reading it. So what we're
Yeah,
trying to do is put these concepts in a much more, I would say simplistic, but much more generic context variety, if you will, a variety of contexts in order to let people understand how the process works. So, in an everyday kind of a applied communication type of way, right? So, books are going to be really hard for me to suggest. I think anything that has to do with conflict resolution is an excellent tool for anybody, and every field is going to talk about it differently. Psychology talks about it differently. Social science. Um, I mean, conflict resolution specialists have different words for different things that mean the same
yeah,
thing. So in
yeah,
communication studies, we have, all of our conflict resolution styles. But at the end of the day, I think if you can understand the notion of just conflict, what your conflict style is, and how to approach conflict in a variety of different styles, it's what we call complementary type of communication, right? That you are able to really approach conflict in a much more meaningful and much more cognizant way because you don't think it's just a one way street, right? When you deal with conflict, it's a variety of different streets. So I would say that we're about to launch our own podcast very soon. So I would say tune into that. I wish I could tell you a name. We're still developing that. I mean, I'm not even, things are just all very, very new.
yep,
But yeah, my hope is that we can actually produce some material for people to
yeah.
really take a look at conflict resolution, conflict management, and of course, any interpersonal communication textbook. If people can get into reading a textbook, which I'm a big old nerd, so I have no problem picking up a textbook. Um,
Same.
but any interpersonal communication textbook will definitely tell people all of the concepts, most of the concepts that I talk about here. But they could be pricey, and if people want to get into it, that's a great way to do it. But I struggle to find lots of people have asked me for resources, and it's a pretty big struggle to find some resources that are currently out there. So we're going to make them. We might
Okay.
as well.
We'll be on the lookout then. We'll be on the lookout. And whenever that does happen, whether it be the podcast or the other resources, let us know and we'll let the community, we'll share that with the community as well. I
Oh,
am a
I'm
lover
excited.
of music, so I like to ask my guests at the last question before we head off to the sunset, if you will. If you were to create a playlist, what would be on your playlist?
Oh my gosh. Can I do artists instead of titles because I can't ever
Yes,
remember the
yes.
titles. Okay. Oh, I love this question. That's awesome. I would throw Pink on there for sure. Um, I would probably have some Miley Cyrus just because the new Flower song just resonates so much with
Okay,
me. I'm a gospel girl, so I don't know. You just throw some gospel on there a little bit.
okay.
Let's see.
Anyone
Um,
specific?
uh, oh, no, I just really like. Really, I could go for a gospel all day long. Um,
Okay.
let's see. Um, Gosh, you know what? I don't know. I'm also a Disney music person.
That's
I
fine.
play some good Disney stuff.
That's
Um,
fine.
Listen, I I'm in this room a lot, and we play a lot of stuff on our Alexa. And right
Yes.
now, I think John Legend is on there right
Okay.
now. So I could
So that's four. Okay.
yeah, there you go. That's about it, really. I kind of filter through all of that. Lizzo's on there. I just opened a keynote with Lizzo actually last weekend. That was a lot of fun. So
Nice, nice.
it's good. I like a big variety. I don't really stick to anything specific, but as long as it's giving me new, I'm good.
The human experience, it's not linear. It's all over the place.
I love that. It's true.
Yeah. So I just want to recap, make sure I got it right. Pink, Miley Cyrus, Gospel, John Legend, Disney, and Lizzo.
Yeah, you got it. That's about right.
Folks, that's about right. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Professor Hamilton. That was dope. So, folks,
Oh,
anyone who's listening to this, I'm hoping that you were able to glean a couple gems from this conversation. I know I was. Number one, that perception checking is something I'm going to use come the next time I'm in front of kiddos. Heck, the next time I have a conversation with someone who I may feel like, is there something I'm missing? Let me just check in, use that perception checking as something going forward. I am Mr. Pierre. She is Professor Hamilton. And I'm so happy that you were able to listen to this episode of the Chronicles of Mr. We're out.
thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Oh, you're great. Thank you so much for being
That was
here.
awesome.
What a
Yeah.
podcast. Such lucky students to have you in the classroom. I'm so pleased that you're
Oh, this
spreading.
was specifically what I appreciate about this conversation was, like I mentioned, that perception checking. I know I've done this plenty of times and just see X, jump to a conclusion, and then